Welcome to Vedic Wisdom for Modern Life.
Hello, everyone.
Today's focus is control the mind with Vedic wisdom. And, as we start this deep dive, I really want you to think about a highly specific, but universally frustrating scenario.
Oh, I think we all have a few of those ready to go.
Right. Have you ever noticed how something completely insignificant, like, say, missing a single green light on your morning commute?
Yeah, or a coworker taking just slightly too long to reply to a basic email.
Exactly. How can something that small somehow derail your entire mood for the rest of the day? I mean, outwardly, you probably look completely fine.
Sure, you're gripping the steering wheel, you're nodding in the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, you're doing the whole responsible adult thing. But inwardly, you are fighting the silent, exhausting battle. One part of you is desperately trying to remain patient, while another part is just itching to react.
It's just being constantly swept away by frustration or distraction or just the sheer noise of daily life.
Yeah.
It's basically the defining struggle of modern existence, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've built a world of incredible convenience, yet internally, we're perhaps more fragmented than ever.
Absolutely.
And the Vedic tradition offers this really profound paradigm shift regarding this exact feeling of being pulled apart. Because we naturally assume that our suffering is caused by external circumstances.
Right. We tell ourselves a very convincing story, like, if my commute were shorter, or if my inbox were actually empty, then I would finally feel at peace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sages understood something radically different. The external world is never going to stop fluctuating. It's just not. So if unshakable peace is what you are actually looking for, the mind is the terrain you have to understand.
Because the suffering isn't in the missed green light.
No, not at all. It is entirely in the mind's reaction to the missed green light.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is a massive shift in how we usually operate. And the mission of this deep dive isn't to figure out how to just, suppress your human emotions.
Definitely not.
And it certainly isn't about running away from your responsibilities to go sit in a cave somewhere. We are talking about awakening to a state where your own thoughts no longer carry you away from your inner strength.
From your deeper purpose, yeah. What the Vedic text would call your Dharma.
Right, your Dharma. But to get there, we have to completely redefine our relationship with the mind itself. We really have to stop treating it like it's the master of the house.
That is the pivotal first step. Because in the Vedic vision, the mind is actually a sacred instrument.
An instrument.
Yeah. It is incredibly subtle, highly creative, and brilliantly designed to help you discern truth, to love deeply, and, just navigate the world.
But an instrument is only as good as the hands that hold it. Right?
Exactly. When the mind is left entirely undisciplined, like when it's just allowed to run wild without any supervision, that exact same powerful tool becomes a tyrant. It just becomes a source of endless exhaustion.
Because an unchecked mind operates sort of like a magnifying glass for our anxieties. I actually think of it like looking through a pair of incredibly smudged, dirty glasses.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like if you walk around with dirt all over the lenses, you are going to look at a vibrant, beautiful landscape and think, wow, the world is really blurry and gray today.
But the world isn't inherently gray.
No. The instrument you are using to perceive the world is compromised. So what does this all mean for our daily reactions?
Well, it means that when someone makes a passing careless remark to you, instead of just letting it drop to the floor, your smudged mind picks it up.
It picks it up and inspects it.
Right, it inspects it and endlessly replays it until a tiny, insignificant comment becomes this deep psychological wound.
Yeah, it just spirals.
Because the mind, by its very nature, wants to chew on things. When it lacks a higher conscious direction, it defaults to chewing on fear and memory and ego.
Wow.
This is why the condition of your mind determines literally everything you experience. When your mind is agitated, even the simplest, most innocent interaction feels like a personal attack.
But when the mind is clear, you see reality as it actually is.
Precisely. Understanding this mechanism changes your entire posture toward your own inner life.
Yeah.
You stop assuming that every single thought that crosses your brain actually deserves your belief.
Or your immediate action.
Right. You shift from obeying the mind's constant movement to simply observing it.
Obeying to observing. I love that. But let's be honest with each other for a second here.
Sure.
Observing the mind instead of getting tangled up in it, that sounds great in theory.
But it's hard.
It feels incredibly difficult in practice. Why is it so incredibly hard to just step back? Because if we look at modern life, it really feels like our minds have been conditioned for decades to just constantly run outward.
Oh, absolutely. We are living in a buffet of noise and comparison and urgency.
Yeah. If the ancient sages used a chariot to describe the mind, the modern equivalent feels like having 50 browser tabs open at once.
And music is playing from one of them, but you don't know which one.
Yes, and your intellect is just the spinning wheel of death trying to find the source of the noise.
That is a very, very accurate diagnosis of the modern condition. The Vedic tradition maps this outward pull brilliantly. It explains this simple chain reaction.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So the senses naturally move toward objects in the external world. The mind, because it's always seeking stimulation, follows those senses.
Makes sense.
And through repeated contact with those objects, attachment grows. So what begins as just a harmless distraction slowly calcifies into bondage.
Wow, into bondage.
Yeah. Every time you repeat this cycle, every time you reach for your phone the second you feel bored or, snap at someone when you feel defensive, you carve a subtle groove into your consciousness.
And the sages had a word for those grooves, right?
They did. They called them samskaras. Over time, your mind doesn't even need a trigger anymore. It just automatically rushes down those familiar, deeply worn paths of craving or judgment.
So it's basically the ancient equivalent of neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together, wire together. To illustrate how to break this cycle, there is this incredibly profound image from the Upanishads. They visualized our human experience as a chariot.
The chariot of life. It honestly remained one of the greatest masterpieces of spiritual psychology ever conceived.
Walk us through it.
Okay, imagine it visually. Your physical body is the chariot itself. Your senses, so your eyes, your ears, your sense of touch, those are the horses pulling the chariot forward.
Got it. Body is the chariot, senses are the horses.
Right. And the mind is the reins connecting the horses to the driver. The intellect, which is your higher discerning wisdom, is the charioteer holding those reins.
Okay.
And finally, the true self, your pure spiritual essence, is just the passenger sitting quietly in the back.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit daunting.
How so?
Well, think about this chariot navigating our current modern world. My senses, my horses, they are huge, they are wild, and it feels like they are constantly being fed sugar by algorithms and endless scrolling and notifications. Meanwhile, my intellect, the charioteer, has decision fatigue, hasn't slept a full 8 hours in a week, and has 100 emails to answer. How can a weak, tired intellect possibly hold the reins of horses that have been fed nothing but pure distilled dopamine?
That is the defining challenge of our era, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Because if the reins are loose, those wild horses will just drag the chariot into the ditch.
Or off a cliff.
Exactly. When your intellect is weakened by constant sensory overload, your mind becomes totally unsteady and your life direction just becomes chaotic. But I want to reassure you here.
Please do.
Vedic teaching is never pessimistic. It doesn't give you this image to induce despair. It gives it to you to remind you of the proper hierarchy of your own consciousness.
So the chariot can be guided.
Yes. The chariot can always be guided back onto the path. You simply place the mind back in its rightful role. It is the reins, not the ruler. It just takes sincere, gradual practice. You don't have to violently wrestle the wild horses to the ground perfectly overnight.
You just have to wake up the charioteer.
That's it.
And to strengthen that charioteer, to hold those reins effectively, we have to arrive at a liberating realization. We have to realize that we are not the reins.
No.
We are not our thoughts.
This is the critical separation point in Vedic wisdom. Thoughts are just movements. They are just weather patterns rising up from memory or habit or fear.
Right.
But you are not limited to those mental movements. You are the awareness beneath them.
The silent presence that actually knows the thought is happening.
Exactly.
It's like the classic analogy of the sky and the clouds, right?
I love that one.
Yeah. Imagine a massive, dark, thunderous storm cloud rolling across the sky. The cloud might be filled with lightning, it might temporarily block out the sun, but the sky itself is completely unharmed.
Yes.
The sky doesn't get wet from the rain, it doesn't catch fire from the lightning. In the exact same way, deeply uncomfortable thoughts will pass through your awareness, but your pure awareness remains completely untouched.
Beautifully said. The danger occurs when we forget we are the sky and we merge with the cloud.
Oh, wow.
We become prisoners of our own mental narration, where we actually believe our own unhelpful commentary. A fearful thought arises, and instead of the charioteer saying, I observe a feeling of fear passing through, we immediately say, I am terrified.
We just fuse our identity with it.
Right. We fuse our identity with a passing energetic state. And this fusion is almost entirely driven by desire and aversion.
Which is what, exactly, pulling and pushing.
Exactly. The desperate urge to pull what we want toward us, desire, and aggressively push what we don't want, away, aversion. We expect the entire universe to obey our personal preferences. And when life inevitably refuses to do that, the mind just burns itself out with frustration.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this a bit, because this is the exact point where the concept of detachment trips people up, especially, in the modern world.
Go for it.
If I'm supposed to stop having preferences and practice detachment, won't I just become a cold, robotic shell of a person? I mean, if I detach, doesn't that mean I become indifferent to the people I love?
What's fascinating here is that people deeply misunderstand the mechanics of detachment. Detachment, in the Vedic sense, is not apathy. It isn't coldness. It is actually freedom.
Freedom from what?
Freedom from the clinging. When you are detached, it allows you to finally love someone without suffocating them with your expectations. It means you can pour your absolute best effort into your work without being completely paralyzed by anxiety over the outcome.
Oh, I see.
You endure the difficult seasons of life without experiencing an inner collapse. You aren't begging the world to behave perfectly before you allow yourself to feel peace.
That makes so much sense. You remain steady because you aren't drowning in the waves. You are sitting on the shore watching them.
Exactly.
But let's get incredibly practical here. Achieving this liberating detachment doesn't happen by accident just because you listen to a nice concept on a deep dive.
Unfortunately not.
Right. Knowing I am the sky doesn't magically stop the hurricane from blowing my house down. It requires a deliberate reshaping of your inner world. It requires discipline.
And I know the word discipline can trigger a lot of resistance. It sounds harsh, like a punishment.
Yeah, it does.
But the Vedic tradition views discipline as the ultimate act of compassion towards your own soul. It starts small, like how long you entertain a negative thought, or keeping promises to yourself, or just pausing before reacting.
Right.
You aren't punishing yourself, you are protecting your awareness. And these small choices actually purify the mind's channels. They shift what the Vedic framework calls the gunas, the subtle forces of the mind.
Let's break those down because this explains so much about our daily moods.
Okay, first there is rajas. This is the force of restlessness, agitation, and endless craving.
In modern terms, rajas is that wired, caffeinated feeling at 2 a.m. when you're exhausted, but your brain is just doom-scrolling and obsessing over an argument from 3 years ago.
Nailed it. That is peak rajas. Next is tamas. This is dullness, lethargy, and weakness.
So tamas is the heavy, apathetic blanket that falls over you when you binge-watch television for 8 hours and end up feeling physically and mentally drained.
Exactly. It's that stuck feeling. And finally, there is sattva. Sattva is lucidity, lightness, and truth.
Ah, okay.
It is that rare, crystal clear feeling you get after a quiet morning walk in the woods without your phone.
So when we talk about the compassion of discipline, we are really talking about the mechanical process of reducing rajas and tamas so that sattva can naturally grow.
That's the entire goal.
And the Vedic tradition offers 4 sacred practices to actually accomplish this, to gather the scattered mind and strengthen that charioteer we talked about.
Yes, the 4 sacred practices. The first one is prayer, and we need to reframe this word a bit.
Yeah, how so?
It isn't necessarily about petitioning the universe for a promotion or a new car. Mechanically, prayer softens the mind. It humbles the ego, and it acts as a deliberate reminder that there is a higher sacred intelligence operating in the universe.
Meaning you don't have to carry the crushing burden of controlling every outcome on your own shoulders.
Precisely. The second practice is mantra.
And I find the mechanics of this fascinating. When your mind is scattered across 1,000 chaotic thoughts, a mantra provides a pure, rhythmic current to follow. It gives the mind a sacred sound to gather itself.
Because if you just tell the mind, stop thinking, it will immediately think louder.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you give it a high-quality anchor, a sacred vibration, you interrupt the brain's default mode network. Over time, that continuous repetition creates deep inner order out of the noise.
That brings us to the third practice, meditative stillness. This is the act of sitting and remaining with your pure awareness without following your thoughts down the rabbit hole.
Which is very hard at first.
Yeah, I want to give everyone listening a quick warning on this. When you first try to sit still, your mind will probably feel 10 times louder than usual. You are not doing it wrong. You are just finally turning the lights on in a messy room and seeing how much junk is actually on the floor.
That initial volume spike is where most people quit. They believe they have failed at meditation. But you simply have to endure that noise with patience. Just watch the mess.
Just watch the mess. I like that.
Which naturally leads to the fourth practice, svadhyaya, or the study of sacred wisdom.
Nourishing the intellect.
Exactly, because if you just forcefully restrain your mind without feeding it anything beautiful or profound, a restrained mind just becomes dry and rigid.
Right.
But when you actively fill your awareness with higher truths, your mind becomes luminous. The lower tendencies, the rajas and tamas, naturally begin to fall away simply because you are no longer feeding them.
Okay, so how do we take these four ancient practices and actually seamlessly weave them into a busy modern existence? I mean, right now, you might be listening to this while folding laundry or sitting on a crowded train. We can't all just retreat to a cave or an ashram.
The profound beauty of Vedic wisdom is that it doesn't demand you abandon the world. It trains you to live differently within it.
So where do we start?
The absolute first step in modern life is to realize that your attention is your most sacred wealth. You must aggressively guard what enters your mind, especially early in the day.
Guard the gates. Do not hand your precious first waking moments over to the manufactured outrage of the internet.
Exactly. If you start the day in rajas, you will spend the rest of the day fighting rajas. And it's also about establishing steadiness in your daily transitions.
Like coming home from work.
Yes. Think about the physical threshold of your home. Before you put your key in the door, pause inwardly. Take one deep breath. Deliberately release the agitation of the workday so you don't carry that mental residue forward into your evening.
And do the exact same thing before you go to sleep. Collect yourself in silence.
Creating these deliberate pauses establishes the value of sacred rhythm. Waking up at a disciplined hour, eating your meals with actual awareness. Constant disorder weakens the intellect. Sacred rhythm strengthens it.
But we have to be realistic here. You will inevitably slip, right? You will have days where the horses drag you into the mud.
Oh, of course. You will lose your temper, you will get hooked by a distraction. And when you slip, the goal isn't to despair or build an entire identity around the fall.
You don't declare, I am a total failure at spiritual life.
No. You simply, gently, without drama, return to remembrance. You pick up the reins again. Because ultimately, the goal of all this Vedic mind mastery isn't just to make you a slightly more calm employee.
Right.
Calmness is wonderful, but it isn't the final destination. The deeper purpose is beautifully illustrated by the analogy of the lake and the moon.
Oh, I love this one.
If a lake is turbulent, muddy, full of waves, it cannot reflect the light of the moon above it. But when the wind finally dies down and the sediment settles, the waters become completely still and clear.
The lake is the mind.
Yes, when the mind becomes completely sattvic and still, it acts as a perfect mirror, reflecting the moon perfectly. And the moon, in this analogy, is your true self.
Wow, you are clearing away the dust of anxiety and desire that hides the mirror.
Exactly. When the mind is finally still, you recognize that your real nature was never limited to the anxious persona that worries and plans. You are the infinite aware presence witnessing it all.
That is just beautifully said. And it beautifully synthesizes the fact that you aren't trying to manufacture a new fake version of yourself.
No.
You are simply uncovering what has always been most real within you. It is an excavation project, not a construction project.
That's a great way to summarize it. The mind is a brilliant tool in your hands, but thought no longer imprisons you.
So to bring this all together as we gently recap the journey today, you don't master the mind through violence or suppression or fear. You guide it through clarity.
Yes.
By watching your mind without hatred, by protecting your precious attention, and by deliberately choosing rhythm over chaos, you build true inner freedom.
And the silence you cultivate inside won't be empty. It'll be filled with deep presence and quiet strength.
It really will. As you step back out into your day, into the busyness and the emails and the noise, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering question to reflect on. We talked earlier about how our thoughts are like clouds passing through the vast sky of our awareness. But what happens if we begin to treat those dark, stormy clouds not as threats to run from, but as necessary rain that waters the soil of our deepest spiritual growth? Does the storm itself have something to teach the sky? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. May your journey inward be filled with peace, clear vision, and steady presence. Take care.
Goodbye, and be well.